The days stretched on like an endless desert, each one heavier and colder than the last. She woke each morning with a hollow ache in her stomach, the gnawing emptiness a constant reminder of her family's cruelty. Plates passed by her, laden with steaming food and sweet fruits, yet she was forbidden even a morsel. Her lips trembled from hunger, her fingers weak, and her eyes constantly darted toward the kitchen and dining hall, longing for the nourishment that was cruelly withheld. Her body grew frail with each passing day, the skin on her arms and legs tightening over brittle bones. Even the simple act of walking across the compound left her dizzy, her head spinning from the lack of sustenance. Yet despite the physical torment, she refused to break entirely. Something deep inside her refused to yield to humiliation. She would not let the cruelty of others extinguish her spirit. Her eyes, though tired, burned with a quiet defiance. The step-relatives who had taken it upon themselves to starve her acted with deliberate cruelty. Each glance, each whispered comment, each smirk as they ate in front of her was designed to humiliate, to crush her dignity. Her brother, particularly, took pleasure in her suffering, his laughter cutting through the quiet of the house like shards of glass. "Perhaps if you were weaker still, you would finally understand your place," he sneered one day, biting into a slice of bread before tossing the crust aside. Her stepmother nodded in agreement, her eyes cold and calculating. "Hunger will teach you humility," she said, her words sharp and final. Yet amidst the suffering, a strange awareness began to grow within her. Something in the household's behavior felt off, more deliberate than mere cruelty. She noticed small inconsistencies, the way her brother and stepmother shared secret glances during meals, the hidden gestures they exchanged as if communicating a plan. There was a rhythm to their actions, a pattern beneath the surface of torment, as though her suffering served a purpose beyond mere malice. Even when her body ached and her vision blurred from weakness, she clung to her curiosity. Each pang of hunger became a reminder to watch, to notice, and to remember. Every whispered conversation she overheard, every plate of food carried past her, seemed to carry a hidden message. Though her strength dwindled, her mind sharpened, honing in on the subtleties her oppressors thought she would never perceive. At night, she would lie on her thin mat, shivering from cold and starvation, yet her mind would race. She tried to piece together the puzzle of their cruelty. Who were they really feeding and why? Why go to such lengths to break her spirit with hunger? Her instincts told her that the denial of food was not merely punishment, it was concealment. Her oppressors were hiding something, and she was determined, even in her weakened state, to uncover it. Days passed, blending into nights, each one a test of endurance and will. The hollow ache in her stomach mirrored the burning curiosity in her heart. Though her body trembled and faltered, her spirit remained vigilant. Every pang of hunger, every moment of humiliation, seemed to push her closer to a revelation. Deep down, she knew the cruelty had a reason, a secret hidden behind layers of fear and greed. And she vowed silently, in the darkness of those long empty nights, that she would endure, that she would watch, that she would discover the truth, no matter how long it took or how much her body ached. The hunger had weakened her body, but it could not touch the fire within her. And as she faced each day, fragile yet resolute, a quiet certainty grew in her heart. The ones who starved her were not the ultimate masters of her fate. Something greater, something unseen, was waiting to guide her, and she would not rest until she had uncovered it. As the days of hunger stretched on, her mind grew sharper, honed by necessity. She could no longer afford to be merely a passive victim. Every whisper, every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that moved differently than it should, became a thread she instinctively followed. Her stomach ached constantly, a gnawing reminder of her weakness, yet it was the discomfort that forced her senses to awaken. She began to notice the subtle rhythm of the house, the way her oppressors moved, the timing of their meals, and the quiet rituals that had always been hidden beneath their facade of normalcy. It began with the voices. Low, hurried murmurs that seemed almost secretive, exchanged when she thought no one could hear. Her stepmother and brother would lean close in corners of the house, whispering in hurried tones, eyes flicking around as though expecting someone to eavesdrop. At first she could catch only fragments, snippets of words, names that did not mean much to her, but the consistency struck her. These were not casual conversations. They were carefully guarded exchanges meant to conceal something, and her mind began to thread them together into patterns. Then came the movements. Plates of food that were never meant for her passed by in silence. She watched as servants carried bowls behind closed doors, as her stepmother slipped down narrow corridors to hidden alcoves, and her brother moved with a quiet urgency that seemed almost unnatural. The routines were deliberate. the household shifted around the invisible recipient of the food, as if they were dancing to a rhythm she could only sense but not fully hear. Every action seemed choreographed, yet she began to see gaps in the dance where she could slip unnoticed, where she could observe without being caught. Her eyes caught the subtle marks on the walls, scratches, faint lines, and oddly placed objects that seemed out of place. A panel slightly ajar, a beam that looked uneven, a mat shifted just enough to reveal a passage beneath. Each clue hinted at hidden spaces within the home, secret pathways that might conceal the true beneficiary of her starvation. Her pulse quickened with both fear and excitement, the gnawing hunger mixing with a sudden surge of determination. At night, she began to patrol quietly, moving with careful precision, listening intently. She traced the patterns she had observed during the day, watching the household unfold like a carefully arranged play. Whispers led her closer to hidden doors. Faint footsteps guided her toward alcoves she had never noticed. The house, which had once felt like a prison, became a map, and she, despite weakness and fatigue, became a keen navigator. Piece by piece, the truth began to emerge. She realized that the food she was denied, the relentless starvation, was not merely an exercise in cruelty or punishment. Someone, or something, was being fed in secret. The meals she had longed for, the nourishment that had been withheld, were meant for another, and her family went to great lengths to conceal this. The sense of injustice burned within her more fiercely than the hunger ever could. With each discovery, her curiosity deepened, matched only by a growing resolve. She would uncover the secret, understand the purpose behind the cruelty, and find out exactly who or what had been the recipient of the meals she had been denied. The subtle signs, the whispers, the movements, the hidden passages, were guiding her toward a revelation that promised to change everything. The hunger that had once weakened her body had sharpened her mind, and the house that had seemed a place of despair had become a puzzle begging to be solved. Every day, every whisper, every secret trace brought her closer to understanding, and she vowed silently that she would not rest until she had uncovered the truth. Night had settled over the compound like a heavy blanket, bringing with it a quiet that was almost unnatural. She moved silently, careful not to disturb even the faintest creak of the wooden floorboards beneath her bare feet. Hunger had made her weak, but it had also sharpened her senses, and every sound, every shift of shadow drew her attention. She had begun to understand that patience was as vital as strength. Only by watching and listening could she piece together the mystery that her family had gone to such cruel lengths to hide. She positioned herself near the edge of the dining hall, a shadow among shadows, her eyes scanning every movement. Plates passed by her empty hands untouched, while her brother and stepmother carried out their carefully orchestrated routines. She noticed how the servants moved with unusual precision, each step purposeful, each glance furtive. Some of them paused in corners, exchanging whispered messages and subtle nods. Others carried dishes through hidden passages, doors she had only recently discovered, and which she had memorized like the lines of a map. It was the absences that struck her most. Certain rooms were deserted during meals, and the absence of specific servants, children, or animals hinted at a secret activity elsewhere. Every disappearance seemed too deliberate, every empty hallway a silent clue. Her mind began to connect the dots. The whispered conversations, the unusual movements, and the hidden corridors all converged toward a pattern she could almost feel, though she could not yet name it. Shadows became her allies. The flickering light of oil lamps cast shifting forms across the walls, and she learned to interpret them as signals. A sudden pause in a shadow's movement often meant someone was hiding, or something was being concealed. The way the servants' figures elongated and twisted against the walls gave away paths and hidden spaces that she could not yet fully access. Even the positioning of chairs and tables, which her family believed mundane, spoke volumes to her attentive eyes. She began to take mental notes, committing each subtle irregularity to memory. Which doors opened silently at unusual hours? Which plates never returned to the kitchen? Which footsteps repeated in patterns too precise to be chance? Her observations slowly built a picture of the hidden activity within the compound, and with each passing night, she became more certain that the food she was denied was being funneled to a secret recipient. The wind itself seemed to aid her, carrying whispers from far-off corners and rustling leaves against open windows. Occasionally, she thought she glimpsed movement outside the compound walls, figures disappearing into the shadows, only to return with carefully balanced bowls or bundles. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation. The truth she was piecing together felt monumental, yet fragile, like glass ready to shatter with a single misstep. Despite weakness gnawing at her limbs, she persisted. Hunger, once purely tormenting, had become a tool for focus. She discovered that her brother's eyes darted toward specific windows before meals, and her stepmother's hands trembled when carrying certain dishes. These small details, almost imperceptible to an untrained observer, were golden clues in the growing tapestry of secrets. Over time, her secret vigil revealed an undeniable pattern. The food she had been denied, the relentless cruelty, was not arbitrary. Every action her family took pointed toward someone, or something, being sustained at her expense. The picture became clearer with each observation, and she felt the first flickers of understanding ignite within her. She crouched in the shadows one night, her breath shallow, her eyes wide, finally beginning to see the edges of the truth. The denials, the whispers, the carefully hidden movements, all pointed toward a single conclusion. Someone was being protected, nurtured, and sustained in secret, and her family's cruelty was a shield for that hidden existence. The puzzle pieces were coming together, and she knew the moment of revelation was approaching. In the quiet of the night, amid hunger and uncertainty, she allowed herself a small, determined smile. Patience and observation had become her greatest weapons, and soon she would uncover the secret that had been kept from her for so long. The truth revealed itself slowly, like the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon, and yet when it struck, it was as sudden and powerful as a bolt of lightning. She had followed the patterns, traced the shadows, and listened to every whisper, and now the pieces fell into place. The food she had been denied, the relentless starvation she endured, was not merely an act of cruelty, it had a purpose she had never imagined. Her eyes widened as she saw it for herself, the hidden beneficiary of all the secrecy and deception. It was a small figure, crouched in a secluded corner of the old storage room that had been long forgotten by the household. At first she thought it was a child, a tiny cousin perhaps, hidden away and fed in secret. But as she drew closer, the faint glow in its eyes told her it was no ordinary child. There was a subtle aura of otherworldliness about it, a soft shimmer that seemed to pulse with life in a way that the shadows themselves responded to. Her breath caught in her throat, part fear, part awe, as she realized this was something, or someone, far beyond her ordinary understanding. The figure turned, revealing delicate features and a gaze that was both knowing and innocent. She felt an immediate connection, as if the hidden being recognized her presence as more than mere curiosity. Every movement it made was graceful, deliberate, and careful, as if it were aware that discovery could come at any moment. She watched in silence, her hunger and weakness momentarily forgotten, as the figure reached for a small bowl of food and began to eat. Each bite was measured, almost reverent, and she understood then why her family had gone to such lengths. This hidden presence was powerful, significant, and integral to the balance of the household in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. Her mind raced, trying to process what she had just seen. A child? A mystical creature? An ally tied to her family's deepest secrets? The implications were staggering. The denial of food, the cruel mockery, the secretive movements, all were designed not to harm her directly but to protect this hidden being, to ensure that it remained nourished, unseen, and undiscovered. Her family's actions, which had seemed purely malicious, now revealed a deeper, more complex motive rooted in fear, superstition, and perhaps even reverence. The figure paused and looked at her directly, and she felt a wave of understanding pass between them. It was as if, in that silent exchange, the truth of her family's actions was conveyed. The sacrifices, the cruelty, the hidden care, all were a tangled web of secrecy meant to shield the vulnerable, to hide a truth that had been feared for generations. Her heart pounded as she realized that she was standing at a threshold, witnessing something extraordinary, a revelation that would change everything she had thought she knew about her home, her family, and her own place in the world. She crept closer, careful not to make a sound, and observed the subtle rituals her family had maintained. The bowls of food, the carefully timed passages, the silent nods between servants, all became clear. Each act of denial she had suffered was mirrored by an act of protection, a silent offering to the hidden beneficiary. The cruelty she had endured was not meaningless. It had been a shield, a way of maintaining secrecy and safeguarding the extraordinary presence that had quietly inhabited her home. A sense of awe and responsibility washed over her. This hidden being was not just a passive recipient, it was a part of a larger story, a link to her family's heritage, a key to understanding the secrets that had been jealously guarded. She realized that her suffering had prepared her for this moment, that the hunger and deprivation had sharpened her perception, her patience, and her insight. She understood now that her role was not only to survive but to observe, to learn, and ultimately to act with care, intelligence, and courage. Her discovery shifted her understanding of the household's dynamics entirely. The stepmother's cruelty, her brother's arrogance, and even the servant's cautious behavior now made sense within this context. The power, the fear, and the reverence that had dictated every movement were all connected to the hidden beneficiary, and she, despite her weakness, had the opportunity to bridge the gap between secrecy and truth. As she lingered in the shadows, watching the figure eat in silence, a quiet determination grew within her. She knew that this hidden presence, delicate and yet profoundly significant, was a responsibility she could not ignore. The revelation was shocking, yes, but it was also empowering. She had uncovered the first tangible thread in the web of secrets, and with careful observation and courage she would follow it to its source, uncover the full truth, and claim her rightful place in the unfolding story of her family. Even in the midst of her suffering and humiliation, a quiet realization began to take root within her. She was not entirely alone. The hidden beneficiary she had discovered was not merely surviving in secret. It had begun to leave small, almost imperceptible signs that spoke directly to her, messages woven carefully into the fabric of her everyday trials. At first, she thought it was imagination or the desperate yearning of a starving mind, but gradually the pattern became undeniable. Someone, or something, was reaching out to her, guiding her silently through the labyrinth of cruelty and secrecy. It began subtly with crumbs. Tiny flecks of bread or kernels of grain appeared along her path as she moved through the compound, placed in locations that were just visible enough to catch her attention without alarming the oppressors. At first, she hesitated, unsure if it was coincidence, a trick of her hunger-addled eyes, or the work of servants. But over time, the crumbs formed deliberate trails, leading her to hidden corners, small alcoves, and even gaps between floorboards that concealed passages previously unnoticed. Each trail ended in a small token of reassurance. A folded leaf with a mark she had come to recognize, a smooth pebble placed carefully in a corner, or a faint scratch on the wall that pointed her gaze toward the next clue. These subtle markers were not just directions, they were messages of care. They whispered silently that she was being watched over, that she was not alone, and that guidance existed in even the darkest moments. Hunger had made her body frail, but these signs nourished her spirit. Each crumb or token carried meaning, a reminder that despite the relentless cruelty of her brother and stepmother, forces beyond her understanding were subtly aiding her. She began to notice patterns in the timing of these markers, the way they appeared near her mat at night or along paths she frequented in secret. It was as if the hidden beneficiary was aware of her every step, orchestrating a secret communication that only she could decipher. One evening, while following a trail of tiny breadcrumbs along the edge of the compound, she discovered a folded scrap of cloth tucked into the crook of an old beam. On it was a simple symbol, something she did not immediately understand, yet it radiated familiarity, as though echoing the essence of the hidden being she had seen. She traced her fingers over it, feeling a faint warmth under her fingertips. The mark seemed to pulse softly, a quiet heartbeat that reassured her that she was on the right path, that she had been noticed and acknowledged. A surge of hope coursed through her, giving her strength to endure the hunger and humiliation she had suffered. Other signs followed in unexpected ways. A faint scent of jasmine in a dark corner, a soft brushing against her arm when she passed through an empty hall, even the gentle flicker of candlelight that seemed to respond to her presence. All were subtle gestures of care, untraceable by her oppressors but unmistakable to her. She began to realize that her every movement was observed with kindness, that patience and attention were being rewarded with guidance, and that these invisible threads connected her to a hidden ally who understood the dangers she faced. The more she observed, the more deliberate these signals appeared. Crumbs were arranged to form arrows pointing to hidden passages. Marks on walls indicated where loose floorboards could be lifted. Small stones marked safe spots to rest or wait without being seen. The hidden beneficiary had transformed the environment itself into a language, one she could read if she paid attention and remained patient. Hunger and weakness had honed her perception, forcing her to notice the details that most would overlook. She realized that this guidance was not only meant to sustain her body in secret but to prepare her mind, to teach her observation, strategy, and resilience. At times, she paused to reflect on the thoughtfulness behind each gesture. Every breadcrumb, scratch, or token was a deliberate act of care, an acknowledgement of her presence, a gentle reassurance that she was not forgotten. She marveled at the intelligence and foresight of the hidden beneficiary, who had remained unseen yet profoundly involved in her survival. It was as though the unseen hand guiding her understood both the danger she faced and the strength she could summon if given the smallest hints in the right moments. With each passing day, the signs became more intricate and meaningful, forming a network of secret communications that only she could interpret. They guided her to safety when her hunger left her dizzy, to hidden corners when prying eyes sought to catch her, and to clues about the household's deeper secrets that had remained concealed for years. The messages of care transformed her isolation into connection, her fear into determination, and her hunger into sharpened focus. By the time she had fully understood the pattern, she realized that she was no longer merely a passive victim of cruelty. The hidden beneficiary's guidance had given her a map of survival, a network of support, and an understanding that she was part of something larger than herself. Each sign was a lesson in patience, observation, and trust in the unseen. She began to understand that survival was not only about enduring hunger but about interpreting the subtle messages left by those who cared enough to protect her from the shadows. In the quiet hours of the night, as she traced a trail of crumbs to yet another hidden passage, she allowed herself a rare smile. She was not alone. The hidden beneficiary had reached out across the darkness, across fear and cruelty, to offer protection and guidance. And with this revelation came a newfound strength, a quiet determination to follow these messages to their ultimate purpose, to uncover the full truth, and to reclaim what had been denied to her. The night had deepened into a velvet darkness, broken only by the faint glimmer of a candle flickering against the walls. She crept quietly through the corridors of the compound, her bare feet making almost no sound against the worn floorboards. The messages of care, the subtle signs left by the hidden beneficiary, had guided her to this moment, and she knew instinctively that the next step required more than observation. She needed someone who could confirm what her instincts had begun to uncover, someone who held knowledge of her family's secrets and the true stakes of the household's machinations. She found the confidant in a small hidden room at the edge of the compound, a loyal servant who had quietly maintained their post for decades, someone who had seen the household's history unfold in silence. Their eyes, lined with age and wisdom, widened with recognition when she appeared, understanding immediately that she had uncovered more than mere patterns and crumbs. The servant gestured for her to sit, their movements slow and deliberate, as if each action carried the weight of generations. With a voice low and careful, the confidant began to unravel the truth. The hidden beneficiary, they explained, was no ordinary presence. It was a child of significance, a chosen guardian whose survival was crucial to the balance of the household and the protection of an ancient family secret. The child had been carefully concealed from the stepmother's jealousy and her brother's envy, and every denial of food, every act of cruelty she had suffered, had been orchestrated to ensure the beneficiary's safety. The household's cruelty, the confidant said, was not born of mere malice. It was calculated, a twisted form of protection designed to keep the most important secrets secure. As she listened, her mind raced to reconcile the revelation with everything she had endured. The servant described the delicate rituals, the hidden passages, and the subtle signals she had noticed. They were all part of a larger system, a network of protection that had been maintained for years. Her family, particularly her brother and stepmother, had feared exposure of this secret more than anything else, and their actions had been aimed at shielding it, even if it meant inflicting suffering upon her. The confidant's gaze softened as they explained the stakes. This hidden beneficiary was tied directly to her mother's lineage, a living link to the family's legacy and ancestral knowledge. If discovered by the wrong eyes, the beneficiary's existence could unravel the carefully maintained order, threaten inheritances, and shift power within the household in ways her oppressors could not control. It became clear that she, too, had a role in this web, a responsibility that extended beyond her personal suffering. The hunger she had endured, the deprivation she had suffered, had prepared her to see what others could not, to notice what others overlooked, and to act when the moment came. Every word the confidant spoke strengthened her resolve. She realized that the hidden beneficiary had been quietly reaching out to her, leaving crumbs and signs not only as protection but as a test of awareness, patience, and courage. The household's secrecy had been designed to conceal, but it had also inadvertently prepared her, sharpening her perception and her intuition. She understood now that survival was not merely about escaping hunger, it was about deciphering the hidden messages, recognizing allies, and preparing for the confrontation that would eventually come. The elder leaned closer, their voice almost a whisper, and spoke of loyalty, responsibility, and courage. "What you have endured is only the beginning," they said. "The hidden beneficiary depends on you, not just for understanding but for action. The family's fear is great because the secret they protect has the power to change everything. And now that you have seen it, you are part of that story. Choose your steps wisely, for each one matters." As she absorbed the confidant's words, she felt a surge of clarity. The hidden beneficiary was no longer a mystery. Their identity, their purpose, and their connection to her family's legacy had been revealed. She knew what she must do, the path she must follow, and the dangers she must navigate. The hunger, humiliation, and subtle signs of care had all led her to this revelation. Armed with knowledge and guidance from the confidant, she felt stronger, sharper, and more determined than ever to uncover the full truth and fulfill the role that destiny had quietly prepared for her. The confidant's words lingered in her mind, like embers glowing in the dark corners of her memory, igniting a spark that demanded action. The hidden beneficiary had been unveiled, their presence understood, but there was still a question that demanded an answer. Why had her family gone to such extremes to deny her food, to humiliate her day after day, to starve her both physically and emotionally? The answer lay not in cruelty alone, but in something deeper, something long hidden and fiercely protected. She felt the pulse of anticipation quicken within her as the confidant prepared to reveal the core of the mystery, a missing element that explained everything. The confidant spoke of an object, a relic that had been carefully concealed by her mother before her death. It was not merely an artifact nor a trinket to be admired. It was a vessel of knowledge, a source of inheritance, and a key to powers her family had long relied upon to maintain authority and control. Her mother, the last guardian of the household's secrets, had entrusted the relic to a hidden place, knowing that only the rightful heir could uncover it. The relic had been safeguarded with precision, its location hidden from all but those worthy of its truth. Her breath caught as she realized the weight of what had been withheld from her. Every bite of food denied, every moment of suffering, had been calculated to prevent her from discovering the relic. Her stepmother and brother, driven by fear of exposure and loss of control, had acted with deliberate cruelty. Each day of deprivation was a day spent shielding the household's power, ensuring that the relic remained concealed from her. And yet, despite their efforts, the signs of guidance, the messages of care left by the hidden beneficiary, had begun to steer her closer to it. The confidant explained the relic's significance with care. It was said to reveal truths long buried, to expose lies, and to illuminate the rightful path for the heir. Whoever possessed it could see the hidden workings of the household, uncover deceit, and claim the inheritance that was always meant to be theirs. In essence, the relic held the power to tip the balance within the family, to bring justice where deception had reigned. The very existence of the hidden beneficiary and the protective measures surrounding them were tied to this object, for it was both shield and revelation, hidden away to prevent catastrophe. Her mind raced as the implications sank in. The hunger she had endured, the cruel jokes and whispered mockeries, were no accident. They were measures taken to maintain the secrecy of the relic and the protection of the hidden beneficiary. Every action, every calculated denial, now made sense in a chilling clarity. The cruelty she had suffered was intertwined with a fear older than herself, a fear of exposure that her stepmother and brother had nurtured at every turn. They had attempted to suppress not only her body but her awareness, keeping her blind to the truth that could unravel their control. The confidant leaned closer, voice soft but urgent. "The relic is more than a secret," they said. "It carries the power of legacy, the authority of generations, and the proof of who is truly entitled. Your family feared its revelation because it would unmask their deception, reveal the hidden beneficiary, and restore the rightful heir to their place. Everything you have suffered has been part of the same story: denial, cruelty, and control, all to protect what should have been yours." As she absorbed this, a new determination took root within her. Hunger had sharpened her senses, humiliation had strengthened her patience, and every observation she had made now coalesced into a plan. The relic was the key, the center around which all other mysteries revolved. She realized that discovering it would not only validate her intuition but also provide the leverage she needed to confront the family's deception and restore the balance of justice. The confidant provided subtle guidance on what to look for, pointing out hidden alcoves, secret markings, and paths previously overlooked. Each tip was small yet crucial, designed to protect both the hidden beneficiary and the relic itself. She understood that the journey ahead would require patience, courage, and careful attention to detail, but she felt ready. The deprivation she had endured had been a test, and she now knew what she was being prepared for. By the time she left the confidant's room, the pieces had begun to align. The hidden beneficiary, the secret messages, and the cruel denial of food were all threads in a single intricate tapestry. At the heart of it lay the relic, a symbol of truth, inheritance, and power that her family had feared above all else. And now, for the first time, she understood her role: to uncover it, to protect it, and to restore what had been denied to her by fear, envy, and deceit. Her heart beat with renewed purpose. Hunger had taught her endurance, observation had honed her insight, and now knowledge had armed her with resolve. The relic was no longer a distant mystery, it was the focal point of her journey, the key to unraveling the household secrets, and the ultimate prize that would expose the truth, claim her inheritance, and reveal who had been feeding in secret all along. The night was thick with silence, the kind of heavy quiet that seemed to amplify even the smallest of sounds. She pressed herself against the wall of the dimly lit hallway, barely daring to breathe as she listened. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but it was a distant ache compared to the tension that gripped her senses. Every step, every whispered word carried weight. She had learned to move like a shadow, to blend into corners, to wait patiently until the right moment revealed itself. And tonight the moment had come. Voices drifted from the room ahead, low and urgent. She recognized the tones immediately, her brother's sharp edge, the smooth manipulation of her stepmother. They spoke cautiously at first, as though the walls themselves might be listening, but the content of their conversation quickly pierced through their careful facades. They spoke of the hidden beneficiary, the very presence she had discovered, and the measures they had taken to conceal the truth. Her stomach clenched in a mix of fear and anticipation. Every word confirmed the suspicions she had pieced together from whispers, shadows, and subtle signs, yet hearing it aloud made the reality shockingly immediate. "They cannot know," her brother hissed, "or everything we've built falls apart. She's too curious, too perceptive. If she stumbles on the truth, it could ruin everything." The words were sharp and she felt a chill run through her body. He spoke not just of fear for himself, but of an awareness that their carefully constructed world was fragile, and that the hidden beneficiary was the keystone. Her stepmother's voice followed, low and calculating, dripping with anxiety and control. "We've kept the food, the signs, and the movements precise. If she notices anything unusual, we must act immediately. This child, this heir, is dangerous if left unchecked. And she," her tone hardened, "must not be allowed to claim what she is entitled to." She felt her pulse quicken as the realization sank in. Their cruelty had a deeper purpose, one that went beyond mere jealousy or spite. They had been suppressing her awareness, starving her not just to dominate her, but to maintain the secrecy of the heir and the relic. She pressed herself closer to the wall, her mind racing. Every word she overheard became a piece of a puzzle she had long been assembling in shadows. The faintest hint of a sigh, the subtle pause in conversation, the careful choice of words, all of it painted a vivid picture of her family's fear, their strategy, and their desperation to control the unknown. She understood now that the stakes were higher than she had imagined. This was no simple household feud. This was a battle for truth, for inheritance, for the hidden legacy that her mother had guarded with her life. Her resolve hardened in that moment. Hunger, humiliation, and the long nights of silent observation had prepared her for this. The hidden beneficiary was not just a secret. They were a responsibility, a connection to the truth that her oppressors feared above all. And she realized that knowledge alone could not suffice. Action, careful and deliberate, would be required. She could no longer wait passively, piecing together small clues. She had to move, to follow the breadcrumbs, to uncover the full truth, and to confront the family's deceit. As she backed away, her heart steadying despite the adrenaline, she took one last careful glance into the room. The voices continued, unaware that the very person they sought to suppress was now fully awake to their fears and their plans. The eavesdropping had given her clarity, purpose, and direction. She knew now that the cruelty, the deprivation, and the subtle guidance had all been steps leading her to this point, where awareness and courage would guide her next actions, and the hidden truths would finally begin to unfold. The candlelight flickered against the walls of her small, hidden corner, casting elongated shadows that danced like silent witnesses to her determination. Hunger still gnawed at her, a persistent reminder of the days she had endured, but her mind was sharp, alive with the fire of purpose. Every observation, every message of care left by the hidden beneficiary, and every overheard confession had led to this moment. She was no longer a passive victim of cruelty, she was a strategist, a careful observer, and a force moving deliberately toward uncovering the truth and claiming what had been unjustly withheld. She began by retracing the paths she had secretly followed for days, the trail of crumbs, the subtle markings, and the overlooked alcoves where the hidden beneficiary had left signs. Each step was deliberate, calculated, and quiet, as though the ground itself needed to be convinced of her intentions. She paused frequently, listening for the faintest sound of her brother's footsteps or the hushed movement of her stepmother's presence. The compound, which had once felt like a trap, now became a terrain she could navigate with skill, every shadow and creaking floorboard a clue, every flicker of candlelight a signal to proceed with caution. Her plan was simple in concept but required perfect execution. She would approach the hidden beneficiary without alerting the oppressors, establish trust, and finally learn the full scope of the secret that had dictated her suffering. Stealth was paramount. She moved like a wisp of smoke, merging with the darkness, keeping her body low, her breathing controlled, and her senses attuned to even the smallest anomaly. Each room she passed held potential danger, doors that could swing open unexpectedly, servants on routine patrols, or the sharp ear of her stepmother, ever vigilant. She counted the timing of these movements, mapping each step in her mind, and rehearsed her approach again and again in silence. Intelligence guided her actions as much as stealth. She recalled every conversation she had overheard, every instruction from the confidant, and every subtle cue left by the hidden beneficiary. She analyzed their patterns, predicting where the beneficiary would appear and the safest route to reach them. The hidden being had been cautious for a reason, and she needed to demonstrate that she could be equally careful, that she could earn their trust without causing alarm. Her mind became a chessboard, each move considered, each contingency accounted for, until the path forward was clear. Courage, however, was the most vital element. Despite the fear that surged through her, fear of discovery, of punishment, and of the unknown, she stepped forward, driven by the knowledge that inaction would perpetuate the lies and cruelty that had dominated her life. Every memory of humiliation, every pang of hunger, became fuel for her resolve. She was no longer merely seeking survival, she was moving toward understanding, toward justice, and toward reclaiming what had been hidden from her by fear and envy. As she drew closer to the hidden beneficiary's secluded space, she slowed her pace, attuning herself to the rhythm of the household. A faint shuffle of fabric, a whisper of movement, confirmed she was near. Her heart thumped not with panic but with anticipation, each beat a drum of focus and readiness. She paused just beyond the threshold, observing the beneficiary from a safe distance, noting every gesture, every small signal, and every sign that might indicate recognition or fear. Finally, she stepped into the faint glow of the room, careful to make her presence known gently. The beneficiary lifted their eyes, and in that instant, an unspoken understanding passed between them. No words were necessary, trust, patience, and intention were conveyed through glances and measured movements. She offered a small, careful gesture, a hand extended in recognition and respect, and the beneficiary responded with a quiet acknowledgement. At that moment, all the preparation, all the observations, and all the courage coalesced. She had succeeded in reaching the hidden beneficiary without alerting her oppressors, establishing the crucial first connection that would allow her to learn the full truth and reclaim what was hers. She felt a surge of triumph, tempered by the awareness that this was only the beginning. Her strategic move had opened the door, but the journey ahead still required patience, intelligence, and courage in equal measure. As she settled into the shadows near the beneficiary, her mind traced the next steps, mapping out the revelations she would uncover and the actions she would need to take. Every subtle sign she had received now made sense. Every denial she had endured became a tool in her preparation, and every ounce of her resolve was sharpened for the path ahead. She was no longer powerless. She was deliberate, aware, and ready to claim her rightful place in the unfolding story of secrets, inheritance, and justice. The sun had begun to dip below the horizon, casting long amber streaks across the courtyard. The room was dimly every
lit,
corner into shadows a shadowy folding into stage corners for what was as if about hiding to their own unfold. secrets. She walked and she moved steadily, carefully, each step every measured, step her bare deliberate, feet silent guided on by the the trail worn she had stones. followed for days. Hunger, humiliation, had and sharpened fear her had been senses, replaced by deprivation clarity, had honed determination, her patience, and courage. And the knowledge she had gathered from uncovered overheard the truth, whispers and understood the hidden revelations had given her the map. and now she it was now
time
walked.
to confront the
The hidden
oppressors who had
beneficiary,
orchestrated her
seated
suffering.
quietly in the far
The
corner,
weight of the moment
lifted
pressed
their
upon
eyes
her,
as she
but
approached,
she welcomed
their
it,
gaze steady
knowing
but
she
guarded.
carried the authority
In
of
that
knowledge
instant,
and the
she
support
felt
of
the weight
forces
of the moment.
unseen.
The convergence
brother
of
and
all her
stepmother were in
suffering,
the main hall,
observation, and
busy
careful
with their
planning
evening
was about to
routines,
reveal its
unaware
secret.
that she had pieced
She
together
spoke
every
softly,
secret, careful
every
not to
act of
startle the
cruelty,
beneficiary,
and every hidden
yet
thread
firm
in
in
thought
her
remained
determination.
unseen. Questions she paused carried in silence for days began to surface, allowing but she allowed them to unfold naturally, her nerves, letting the beneficiary guide the pace of disclosure. Calm but unwavering. And then, piece by piece, the truth emerged. Her presence drew attention. The food she had been denied, eyes widened, the whispered warnings, mouth, the subtle signs she had noticed emerged. All of it led to the same revelation. Mocked my suffering, the beneficiary had to erase what was rightfully mine, shielded from harm, her gaze nurtured with the very provisions her family had withheld from her. But you could not hide every deprivation she had endured had been intertwined with a hidden what you have feared all along. A layered strategy. Every was only now beginning to comprehend, resonating with the gravity of her discoveries, revealing a lineage that connected with the mixture of her own family, a bloodline intertwined with guardianship, heritage, and the preservation of ancestral knowledge. The hidden beneficiary emerged from the shadows, a method of maintaining secrecy while the beneficiary her revelations. A living proof of the hidden signs and the protective gestures had been part of an intricate system of care, the household designed to preserve the undeniable strength and to keep them unnoticed by those who feared their anticipation. And she realized with growing clarity that the hidden beneficiary was more than a passive presence, and the messages they were a living testament to her family's legacy, exposing every piece that connected deprivation and manipulation. Every deceit she began to understand every hidden motive revealed. Her family's fear of exposure was not denial faltered as she detailed it was grounded in the power and influence the beneficiary represented, the orchestrated humiliation, the inheritance, the knowledge, and the authority tied to their existence had been intentionally obscured. The villagers who had gathered silently at the edges of the courtyard began to murmur, realization dawning in their eyes. Each cruel act had been a shield. The hidden beneficiary of humiliation and misdirection now stood guiding her and the beneficiary along paths that, if navigated correctly, would reveal the full truth at the right concluded. The beneficiary revealed how her mother, the previous guardian, had entrusted the oppressors could no longer mask their ensuring that the lineage would continue even if the household authority of truth and observation. Every meal she had confronted them with intelligence and courage and careful strategy, carefully turning the tables on years of oppression until the rightful heir herself. The household was prepared to claim her knowledge and authority. Now trembled with the realization struck her profoundly, and the rightful heir had stepped forward, not merely of endurance but of perception, courage, and discernment. Her suffering had been a preparation, a sharpening of her senses and her awareness, readying her for the moment when she would confront the full scope of the family's deception. She traced the connections in her mind, the hidden beneficiary, the stolen meals, the subtle signs of care, the confidants' revelations, all converged in a single point of clarity. The household's cruelty had masked an intricate system of protection, designed to keep the truth from being discovered too early. Her stepmother's envy, her brother's fear, and the orchestrated suffering she had endured were not just acts of malice. They were calculated measures to maintain secrecy. And now, standing before the beneficiary, she understood the depth of their strategy and the magnitude of what had been at stake. The final revelation came gently, almost imperceptibly, through a gesture. The beneficiary handed her a small token, wrapped carefully in cloth, a symbol of the lineage and the trust placed in her. In that simple act, the full truth became tangible. The meal she had been denied had sustained the guardian, the hidden beneficiary had preserved the legacy, and she herself was now recognized as the heir, the one prepared to claim and continue the family's secrets. Every hardship she had endured, every subtle sign she had followed, every whispered observation, all had led to this moment of understanding and connection. A surge of clarity and purpose washed over her. She realized that the household's cruelty, the hidden signs, the deprivation, and the careful guardianship had been part of a single narrative, a test, a protection, and a revelation intertwined. The hidden beneficiary had survived, the lineage was preserved, and she, having deciphered the truth, was now ready to embrace her role fully. She understood who had been fed, why, and how every act of cruelty had served a larger purpose, binding her to her heritage and awakening the destiny that awaited her.